Hi, so today I'm going to talk about is quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. The formula is just so easy. ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So how can we perform it into a way that we can solve for x? So the formula should be like this. Plus c equals to 0. So ax squared plus bx divided by a equals negative c divided by a. When we divide it by a, we can find x more easily. So when we divide it by a, it should be like this. X squared plus bx divided by a equals negative c divided by a. So we just part out x plus bx, and then we just divide by a. We still have to add one more variable to represent c. So we just use this to represent c. So this should be 1 over 2. Let me just write it down. 1 over 2. Just multiply it by b divided by a. Just square this. Then this equals, when we have this one added, and then the other side, we need to have this one added. Okay? When we have this added, we just multiply the whole thing into this. I'm going to show you about the steps. So the original sum, it should be like this, and then we just transform it into this one, a square. When we have to do square, then that should be b squared divided by 2 squared and a squared, right? So that means the sum equals to b squared divided by 4a squared. So we knew about this. So let's just write it down. 4a squared. 4a squared. So, as I was saying, and then we just multiplied this one too into b squared divided by 4a squared. And then it should be x squared plus x multiplied b divided by a. We just want to factor out the x's. Okay? So, and then we just have to factor out the x. Why? When we factor out the x, it is more easier for us to calculate. So when we factor out the whole thing, it should be like this. Okay? So once we have done this, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is too much. And then for this one equals to negative c divided by a, and then plus. So when we just make the denominator be the same, so we have to use 4a multiplied by a, and then 4a multiplied by c plus b squared divided by 4a squared. And then the left hand side just kept the same. Just keep the same first. And then the sum will be like, the equation will be like this. So when we just combine the two denominators, because they're the same, into one denominator, so it should be b squared minus 4ac. And then we just have to change the square from left hand side to right hand side, which makes it to a square root. So it should be like this. And for square roots, I have another thing to mention. It's about, it can be positive, either positive or negative. It can be both, actually. So as we have done about this one, so we can just say x plus b divided by 2a. Okay, and then we have to factor out we just have to square root the 4a squared, because we can factor it out. So we can just say it's just square root b squared minus 4ac. Then how to square root it? We just have to square root the 4 for a bracket, and then just square root out the a squared. So that means it makes it to 2 multiply a's, which makes it to 2a as the final result. So the denominator should be 2a, and then x plus b divided by 2a. So once we have to solve for x, we have to put the b over 2a into the right hand side. So how can we do this? We have to make the two denominators into the same. As it's the same, we have to move it into one. So it should be negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So this solves for x. So the final result, it should be like this. And then maybe you don't understand why I have to use this formula to solve any problems. Okay, so I give you an example. If a formula is like this, how can you solve for x? We have to move this 8x, so that means this part to the left hand side. You may ask why? Because once we move into the left hand side, which makes it to 0, and it actually fits our ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, this structure. It can truly put in here. So I'm going to erase it. And then, as I'm saying about x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So Do you know which one is A? Of course, the 4 should be A because it is the coefficient of x squared. And for x coefficient, it should be B. And for the 1, it should be C. As shown in the formula below. Actually, I've explained it. And we just put all the numbers into the alphabets. So that means it should be -8 plus or minus square root bracket -8 squared minus 4 multiply 4 multiply 1. Remember, there should be a bracket. I should make it like this. Remember that there should be a bracket, or you will calculate it wrong. Okay? So, and then we just use this one divided by, as A is 4, to multiply 4. So, x equals to -8 plus or minus square root 64 minus 16 divided by 8. And then we just have to move to the next step. It should be -8 plus or minus square root 48, and then it just divided by 8. So how can we solve square root 48? We just have to do like this. 16 multiply 3, as we just do the prime factorization. It should be 48 divided by 2, it should be 24 divided by 2, 12 divided by 2, 6, and then divided by 2 is 3. So we make the prime factorization over here. And then it should be these 2 over the power of 4. So once we've done it, and then we have the square roots into 2. So 16 is 4 of the power in 2. So what we have to do is put the 4 into the multiplication, and then just square root 3. So which makes it into x equals -8 plus or minus square root 3 and 4. I didn't put the 4 inside. You have to note that. Divide by 8. So that means x equals -8 plus or minus. We can put the 4 before this square root, or it can be after the square root as well. So once we have made it into this, we can have positive or negative. So we just have plus first. Or x equals to -8 minus, for this one, 4, and then divided by 8. So these two are the final answers of x. This is the end of today's sharing and today's explanation. Bye.